Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamunatiravanashari Yamunatiravanashari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivartakacharya Ashtuta Shatashi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivartakacharya Ashtuta Shatashi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories to the assembled devotees Hare Krishna All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, text number 12. Munir Vivakshur Bhagavad Gunanam Sakapi Te Bharatam Aha Krishna Yasmin Nrinam Gramya Sukhanuvadir Matir Grihita Nu Harehe Katayam Munir Vivakshur Bhagavad Gunanam Sakapite Bharatamaha Krishna Yasmin Rinam Gramya Sukhanuvadir Mati Grihita Nu Harikatayam Munir Vivakshur Bhagavad Gunanam Sakapite Bharatamaha Krishna Yasmin Rinam Gramya Sukhanuvadir Mati Grihita Nu Harikatayam Munir Vivakshur Bhagavad Gunanam Sakapite Bharatamaha Krishna Yasmindrinam Gramya Sukhanuvadir Matir Grihitanu Harih Katayam. Could you repeat? Mataji's? Munihi, the sage, Vivakshuhu, described, Bhagavat, of the personality of Godhead, Gunanam, transcendental qualities, Sakha, friend, Api, also, Te, your, Bharatam, the Mahabharata, Aha, has described, Krishna, Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, Yasmin, in which, Nriyanam, of the people, Gramya, worldly, Sukha Anuvadehi, pleasure derived from mundane topics, Matihi, attention, Grihita, Grihitanu, just to draw toward, Harehi, of the Lord, Katayam, speeches of Bhagavad Gita, Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Your friend, the great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, has already described the transcendental qualities of the Lord in his great work, the Mahabharata. But the whole idea is to draw the attention of the mass of people to Krishna Katha, Bhagavad Gita, through their strong affinity for hearing mundane topics. The great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa is the author of all Vedic literature, of which his works, Vedanta Sutra, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Mahabharata, are very popular readings. As stated in the Bhagavatam 1.425, Srila Vyasadeva compiled the Mahabharata for the less intelligent class of men, who take more interest in mundane topics than in the philosophy of life. The Vedanta Sutra was compiled for persons already above mundane topics who might already have tasted the bitterness of the so-called happiness of mundane affairs. The first aphorism of Vedanta Sutra is Tato Brahma Jigyasa, i.e., only when one has finished the business of mundane inquiries in the marketplace of sense gratification can one make relevant inquiries into Brahman, the transcendence. Those persons who are busy with the mundane inquiries which fill the newspapers and other such literatures are classified as Stri Shudra Dvijabandhus, or women, the laborer class, and the unworthy sons of the higher classes, Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya. Such less intelligent men cannot understand the purpose of the Vedanta Sutra, although they make a show of studying the sutras in a perverted way. The real purpose of the Vedanta Sutra is explained by the author himself in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and anyone trying to understand Vedanta Sutra without reference to Srimad Bhagavatam is certainly misguided. Such misguided persons who are interested in the mundane affairs of philanthropic and altruistic work under the misconception of the body as the self could better take advantage of the Mahabharata, which was specifically compiled by Srila Vyasadeva for their benefit. The great author has compiled the Mahabharata in such a way that the less intelligent class of men who are more interested in mundane topics may read the Mahabharata with great relish, and in the course of such mundane happiness can also take advantage of the Bhagavad Gita, the preliminary study of the Srimad Bhagavatam or the Vedanta Sutra. Srila Vyasadeva had no interest in writing a history of mundane activities other than to give less intelligent persons a chance for transcendental realization through Bhagavad Gita. Vidura's reference to the Mahabharata indicates that he had heard of the Mahabharata from Vyasadeva, his royal father, while he was away from home and was touring the places of pilgrimage. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gananjana Shalakya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Hina Bhutali Swayamrupakata Mayam Dadatti Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapata Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shta Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Jivam Sadvaitam Savdutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Shta He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpati Gopishaka Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchara Gaurangi, Radhi Vrindavaneshwari, Vrishabhanusate Devi, Pranamami Hare Priye, Vanchakapatu Vishra, Kripasandu Bivacha, Patita Nam Pavani Pyo, Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha, Namo Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prishtaya, Bhutalesh Bhakti Vikasa Swamin Itinamane, Namo Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prishtaya, Bhutalesh Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Itinamane, Namaste Sarasvati Devi, Gauravani Prisharne, Nirvishesha Shunivari, Pashchati Deshatarne. Bhuter Mahadviri Mathoro Vibor, Nirmaya Shiti Yad Amushipurashaha, Bungti Gunan Shodasha Shodashatmaka, Sorang Shishta Bhagavan Vachamsime. Your friend, the great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, had already described the transcendental qualities of the Lord in his great work, the Mahabharata. But the whole idea is to draw the attention of the mass of people to Krishna Katha, Bhagavad Gita, through the strong affinity for hearing mundane topics. There's a few points of this purport. And the verse itself, just a couple of things with the Sanskrit, is that you could pull it up if you don't mind, and I'll also be going on to other verses as well. That there's this word, well, first, Sakapi, also your friend. Your friend, the great sage Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa. So this is Vidura speaking. Vidura's talks with Maitreya. So Vidura is speaking right now. He's speaking to Maitreya. And he's telling Maitreya, you're a good friend, Sakha, who is that? Devaki Nandan Prabhu, who's explained that word before. So that's a very close friend, in other words. Even though he's a Muni, even though he's Vyasadeva himself, he's very close to Maitreya. Maitreya and Vyasadeva, they must be very close to be described as such. And Vidura is saying this. Vidura is Vyasadeva's son. So he must know their relationship pretty well. How they're good friends? Hard to say, probably because this word here, Muni, they're both Munis. Vyasadeva is like the chief of all the Munis. And Maitreya is also a very elevated Muni. So they're friends like this. Other points, there's nice points in the Sanskrit itself. Matir Grahita nu Hare Katayam. That to draw their attraction towards Hari Kata, Krishna Kata, Vyasadeva authored, or he spoke, the Srimad Bhagavatam too, but specifically the Mahabharata. That reminds me of another verse in the 7th canto. Prahlad Maharaj, he says, Matirna Krishna Bharatu Svatu Vamito Bipadyata Griha Vardhanam. Even though Vyasadeva has given these narrations, still, materialist karmis, it's difficult to arouse in them this attraction, Grihita Nu Hare Katayam, this attraction towards Hari Kata, attraction towards hearing about the pastimes of Krishna. So Vyasadeva, so onto the purport, there's a couple points. I'll just go systematically. He wrote the Mahabharata. Well, he has a bunch of works. The Vedanta Sutra, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Mahabharata, Prabhupada lists as the major ones. He wrote so much more. There's 18 Puranas. He divided the Vedas. He didn't technically write them. And also Ramayana as well. Well, in one sense, it's come from Valmiki, but still it's taken like that Vyasadeva is sort of, I guess you could say, he's considered the father of all Vedic literature, even though Ramayana specifically has its origins in Valmiki. So he has so many works, but among them, the most prominent ones are the Vedanta Sutra. Well, Vedanta Sutra is known, Mahabharata is known, Bhagavatam a little bit less known, in India is a little more known, but is still not placed in the same platform amongst the population, general public, as the Vedanta Sutra, which is becoming more obscure now, actually. Most people don't know about it. During the time of Srila Prabhupada, many Westerners actually knew of Vedanta Sutra. Now it seems like nobody has even heard of the thing, even among Indians. A lot of them don't know what Vedanta Sutra is. They know what Mahabharata is. Mahabharata is still very popular, and for good reason, because Vedanta Sutra, as I said here, it was compiled for persons already above mundane topics, who might have already tasted the bitterness of the so-called happiness of mundane affairs. So these people are very few now. People were already above the mundane topics. Rather, people who have tasted the bitterness of mundane affairs, those are very few. What if speak of people who are transcendental to mundane topics? So Vedanta Sutra, not so popular. Even if people know about it, hardly do they read it. And even if they read it, they don't understand it. And if they seemingly understand it, they screw out some meaning. As Prabhupada is making the point here, those persons who are busy with the mundane inquiries, what is that? Such unintelligent men cannot understand the purpose of the Vedanta Sutra, although they may make a show of studying the sutras in a perverted way. So yeah, there's different points. So Vedanta, practically nobody studies it nowadays. Those people who do, most of them screw out some meaning. Whether it be laymen or Mayavadis, generally the laymen, if they study Vedanta at all, they study some Mayavadi commentary. Vaishnavas also study. Within ISKCON is not so popular. Of course, we have our Govinda Pasya, Baladev Vidyabhushan. Generally, it's not for, the average devotee hasn't read it. Let's say like that. The average devotee hasn't read Srila Prabhupada's books. But we emphasize differently. We emphasize Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, etc., like that. So, but still, other Vaishnavas, they emphasize more. Sri Vaishnavas, Madhvas, specifically, they emphasize more on studying the commentaries of their acharyas on that. And there's commentaries of the there's Ramanujacharya has his commentary, Madhva has his commentary, and then there's sub-commentaries on those commentaries even further. So within different Vaishnava sampradayas, the Vedanta Sutra is given more importance. Srila Prabhupada, he also gave it importance. He was planning on giving a commentary, writing a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. You see that in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Actually, I'm just trying to think. I sent something recently, like a month ago, to the chat. He started something on the Vedanta Sutra at some point. Um, the Bhaktivedanta commentary, something like that. I forget the name. Bhaktivedanta Bhashya. So Srila Prabhupada started a commentary, or at least conceived of one, but he never really got around to explaining it. He explained the essence. We have his explanations of, just like there's this verse, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, Jamadiyasya no, that's the Bhagavatam, sorry. Actually, yeah, that's also Vedanta Sutra. That's the second aphorism. Jamadiyasya yataha. What is that? Shabda. What is that? Enar vritti shabda, something like that. Anyway, I should know these things, but I don't. He explains some essential commentary. That's the final sutra of the Vedanta Sutra. I mean, you see, so Vedanta Sutra is given so much importance. I don't know the aphorisms because I haven't studied it. Because it's not so much emphasized. Practically, more important than the Vedanta Sutra for this age is the Bhagavatam, because the reason, the author himself, the purpose of the Vedanta Sutra is explained by the author himself in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And anyone trying to understand the Vedanta Sutra without reference to Bhagavatam is certainly misguided. So if you understand Srimad Bhagavatam perfectly, you understand Vedanta Sutra. And you can take it conversely, but just this fact, if we perfectly understand Bhagavatam, which more clearly elaborates upon those aphorisms of the Vedanta Sutra, everything's there within Vedanta Sutra. You see, Acharyas have given explanations uncovering Rasa Lila within Vedanta Sutra, but it's not immediately apparent if you just look at the Sanskrit. You need divine revelation from Krishna, which means either you're a pure devotee already and you don't need to study Vedanta, or you're reading the commentary of a pure devotee, you're studying it under him. But Bhagavatam is more explicit. It deals with Krishna directly, it deals with Krishna's pastimes. It gets right to it because Vyasadeva has gotten more directly to it. So it's more relevant and it's easier for the layman to take advantages, because just as in Mahabharata, there's many stories within the Bhagavatam and it's very relatable. Even now, many people within India, even lay people, they know of Bhagavatam and they read Bhagavatam, not even necessarily Vaishnavas. But more important, or I mean more, I guess you could say popular, is the Mahabharata. Even more so than Bhagavatam. Of course, we emphasize differently. Actually, we emphasize the same because Mahabharata means Bhagavad Gita. The essence of the Mahabharata, as is stated here, is the Gita itself. So the Gita is the essence of the Mahabharata. So in that way, we also emphasize the Mahabharata, in that we emphasize the essence of the Mahabharata. We emphasize study of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada did so. He gave Bhagavad Gita as the first thing when he came to the West. He translated it when he was in India, actually, but that manuscript was either destroyed or stolen or something happened to it. And then he retranslated, not exactly translate, but more importantly, the commentary when it came to America. So first thing, he gave Bhagavad Gita, the essence of the Mahabharata. It's such an important thing. And Mahabharata is still popular today because Vyasadeva has specifically imbued this book, Mahabharata, with a potency that it attracts the minds of mundane men. It attracts Stri, Shudra, Dvijabandhunam. As this verse is being quoted from Bhagavatam, Stri, Shudra, Dvijabandhunam, Trai, Nashuti, Gochara, Karma, Shreyasi, Mudhanam. You can pull this up, 1425. Shriya evam bhaved iha iti bharatam akyanam kripaya munina kritam. So, go to the English, and I'll read a little bit from the from the purport, sorry. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus, he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for the women, laborers, and friends of the twice born. So, I'll go through this purport because part of it's also relevant. The friends of the twice born families are those who are born in families of the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, or the spiritually cultured families, but who themselves are not equal to their forefathers. Such descendants are not recognized as such for want of purificatory achievements. The purificatory activities begin even before the birth of a child, and the seed-giving reformatory process is called the Garbhadhana Samskara. One who has not undergone the Garbhadhana Samskara or spiritual family planning is not accepted as being an actual twice-born of an actual twice-born family. The Garbhadhana Samskara is followed by other purificatory processes, out of which the sacred thread ceremony is one. This is performed at the time of spiritual initiation. After this particular samskara, one is rightly called twice-born. One birth is calculated during the seed-giving samskara, and the second birth is calculated at the time of spiritual initiation. One who has been able to undergo such important samskaras can be called a bona fide twice-born. So, so I'll get to this. Let me see. So generally, I'll cover this first. So generally, the Mahabharata, Dvijas, twice-born. Generally, we take it Brahmanas, Dvija. Sometimes we translate as Brahmana, but it's not exactly Brahmana. Dvija means twice-born, means they have a sacred thread. Specifically, if you want to be strict about it, it's one, ideally, the highest class is having undergone all these samskaras from birth, and they also receive this sacred thread from the spiritual master earlier in life, typically, traditionally, and like that. So they're trained from birth like this. They undergo samskaras. Samskara, it means like refinement. You can take it something like that, for lack of a better word. We have this word Sanskrit. Sanskrit means very refined. Means refined, actually. So samskara, kara means like to do. Samskara means to like refine or purify. You can also take it like that. So samskara, well, a lot can be said about that. Vedic culture, in one sense, is nothing more than this culture of samskaras. In one sense, you could take it like that. Samskaras and also the culture that comes from that refinement of samskaras. So one who is cultured by way of samskaras, he becomes dvija. And one who is initiated into this spiritual line, he's qualified to study the Vedas. Otherwise, not. Typically otherwise not. Yeah. Anyway, I'll get to that a little bit more. So for those who are don't have these, who are not dvija. Dvija means Vaishya, even Kshatriya, and Brahmana. They all study the Vedas. Typically, the Brahmanas, they chant the Vedas, they memorize the Vedas, even from an early age, from the point of receiving the thread, not before that. And then others, they may study, they can study. Kshatriyas, not so much. Typically, they may hear something like that. They are Brahmanas who explain the Vedas to the kings, like this. There's a mutual cooperation. But these classes, Stri, Shudra, Dvijabandhunam, so these three classes, Trai Nashuti Gochara, they're not qualified to study the Vedas, or to even sometimes it's said to hear the Vedas. Shudras, they're not meant to hear the Vedas even. Formerly, of course, Vyasadeva has written it, formerly everything was done by hearing. So hearing means different things. Hearing means directly Vedic mantra, because directly they can't understand Vedic mantra. Probably they don't even speak Sanskrit or understand it. Even if they have some knowledge, the Sanskrit of the Vedas is a different Sanskrit that's there in the Bhagavatam. You see scholars that refer to Puranic Sanskrit and Vedic Sanskrit. We differentiate. There's the actual understanding. This is more of lay Sanskrit, if there is such a thing, what's in the Bhagavatam. Even that's very high, actually. Within the Vedas, what's there is Daivi Sanskrit, the Sanskrit that's used by the demigods. Therefore, even some Vedic mantras you can't translate properly, because the words are used by the demigods themselves, and their language works, then the language is working in this realm. I can't give direct perception of this, but the words refer to more of conceptual things rather than even some tangible objects like that. I don't speak the language. This is just something I've heard explained like that. So even for those who speak and understand Sanskrit, even the Brahmanas, who understand Sanskrit, even the Vedas are a little bit difficult to understand. You see many Brahmanas, even today, they may know a Veda, they may know 2, 3, 4 Vedas, but they may not even necessarily understand what those mantras mean. Both the ultimate in Vedashta Sarver Aham Eva Vidyaha and the immediate meaning, the actual translation of the mantra. So what to speak of these classes studying them? Those who haven't undergone the reformatory processes properly, Dvija Bandhus, who were just born in a Brahminical family, who haven't undergone samskara, or even they may have undergone samskara, but they're not, by character, they're degraded. They're unable to understand the Vedas. To understand the Vedas, you need a high level of purity, actually. Also done so under a proper guru is a big topic. Others, Shudra, less intelligent. They can't understand the Vedas. Like I was saying, hardly they speak Sanskrit. What to speak of? If they heard Vedic mantra, they wouldn't even understand the Sanskrit. What to speak of deciphering it? So they're not qualified to understand the Vedas. Even if they understand it a little bit, they're not qualified to explain it like that. It means if they understand some Sanskrit, they're not qualified to have access to the realm of that. Then Stri, women class, why can't they study the Vedas? Another point, Shudra and Stri, one connection here is they're not Dvijas. They're not twice born. They're not given the sacred thread, traditionally. And you need this sacred thread, this samskara specifically. It's not just a thread, it's initiation into the study of the Vedas. Specifically, this samskara is there. So women are not given sacred threads, so they don't have realm to study the Vedas like that. Similarly, same thing with Shudras. Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, Brahmanas, like I was saying, they're Dvijas, Shudras not, so they're disbarred from studying the Vedas. Stri, also different reasons, as well as that. That's chief reason. Other reasons are also there, just like the Sudras. Stri, generally, maybe wives of Brahmanas, they may know some Sanskrit, but generally they're not given an education like that. They're not given the same education as the men who are going to a Brahminical Gurukul, something like that, etc. We see even Kshatriyas, they're given an education on how to rule. We hear Prahlad Maharaj in the 7th canto receiving an education in, was that Dhanurveda, I think? Something like that. The art of ruling, the art of warfare, etc. like that. So different classes have different educations. Vaishyas, presumably they're given an education by their own parents in whatever they're doing, whether it be agriculture, business, etc. like that. So the education is a little less formal. But Stri, women, typically their duty is household affairs, taking care of the family like this. Not so much Vedic study. Not to say that they're ignorant of the Vedic philosophy, but directly they don't study the Vedas like this. For them, specifically, of course, it's not that they're disbarred from Vedic conclusions, because specifically, Vyasadeva, the incarnation of Godhead, keeping them in mind, all three classes, he wrote this Mahabharata. Generally, these classes, Stri, Shudra, Dvija, Bandhu, Nam, they're typically frivolous, and they're more entertained with rather complex philosophy with more mundane topics. Typically, you see this. Low-class men, they're attracted to reading newspapers. Srila Prabhupada is saying here, they read so much stuff. Now it's changed from newspapers. Hardly anybody reads newspapers. I'm surprised they print the things anymore, because everything's digital now. People read digital online news. People read like that. They read like social media like this. It's low-class reading, actually. It's very low-class topics. Even if you want to read something, what's written in the newspaper, even on social media like that, is very low-class things. Hardly people read books. Books, if you want to, even in terms of reading, it's way more beneficial to read a book because even from a mundane point of view, because it's been edited to, so much work has gone into a book, whereas what people post in, what's printed in the newspapers, what people post on social media, is very, very low-class stuff. It has no effect. So hardly people aren't even attracted to mundane books now. What to speak of spiritual literature? So typically, these classes, they're attracted by mundane topics, and they're looking for some sort of enjoyment, like this. Yeah, specifically, Srila Prabhupada writes here. So Vyasadeva compiled the Mahabharata for the less intelligent class of men, who take more interest in mundane topics than in the philosophy of life. So the Mahabharata contains all the conclusions of Vedic literature because it has the Gita in it. Nevertheless, Vyasadeva has done some preaching strategy, and he presented the Mahabharata in such a way that it's compiled is a better word, I guess, that it's filled with stories that are attracted to the mind. Seemingly mundane stories, although Well, yeah, just for example, for those of you who read, I don't know, different devotees here have read different Mahabharatas. Um, of course, there's full translations if you have the courage to read that. Then there's summary studies. Some of the summary studies, they just get to the essence of the story of the Pandavas. But there's so much stuff within the Mahabharata, actually. There's so many side stories. Just like Matsya Prabhu, many eons ago, he was giving a class in the Mahabharata, and he was just narrating how the Mahabharata came to be. I don't know if some of you were there for that. And he was just, he was describing basically how Vyasadeva and Vidura and Bhishma and how all that came about. And there's so many stories going on. I won't repeat them. It's difficult to follow. There are many other stories. So some translations, they just omit them entirely. Not usually those beginning ones, but there's other stories within the Mahabharata. It seems like a huge deviation or offshoot tangent from the main storyline. There's Nala and Damayanti, basically like two lovers. You could take it like that. Nala was a hero, and Damayanti, she was very attracted by Nala. Nala had a kingdom like that, basically. I'll summarize it. Basically, long story short, Nala became possessed by Kali, the personality of Kali, and he entered into a gambling match and he lost his kingdom in a game of dice. Sounds very familiar, like Yudhishthir. So he lost his kingdom, he lost everything. Both of them went to the forest, and he was under the influence of Kali. He even, his wife followed him to the forest, actually. She was so chaste, this Damayanti. She was so chaste. But still, because of the influence of Kali, for different reasons, Nala abandoned his wife. So, long story short, the wife goes back to her father's kingdom after much wandering alone. And then Nala, he also ends up in the same kingdom in disguise. And then Damayanti recognizes Nala and they get back together again. And Kali leaves Nala's body like this. So, it's kind of like, what do you learn from it? What's the moral of the story? Nothing really. If you look at it in one sense, there's one thing you could pull from it. How did Kali enter into Nala's Nala was very pure, actually. He would offer prayers morning and evening. He's very pure in behavior. Of course, he is not mentioned he was a Vaishnava, so there's not that ultimate pureness, but at least he seemed to be in some level of sattva gun like that. How did Kali enter into his possess him? Because one day he was negligent, and then before chanting his evening prayers, it's described, he passed water and he didn't wash his feet after doing so. And then Kali entered into his personality, and then all this happened, actually. He lost his kingdom, everything. So you could take a cultural point from that, but this is a huge section in Mahabharata. This is chapter in this translation I read, summary study. If this is the Mahabharata, it's about the same size. The story was maybe like this long, if you can see something like that. It was a huge story, and I was pretty surprised. There's others, Savitri, Satyavan. Some of you may know this. I don't know. I had some knowledge of this. I think it has been narrated in some classes. So basically, Satyavan, he was also a hero, prince. I think he was cursed to die early. Savitri, she was a princess. She was looking to get married, and she was attracted to Satyavan, and she knew that he would die early. Nevertheless, she wanted him as husband. So, big surprise, Satyavan dies early, and then Savitri is devastated. And then Yamaraj comes to take away the soul of her husband. And then by the influence of her chastity, she follows Yamaraj. Yamaraj is taking the soul of her husband away. And Yamaraj is just impressed, and she begins speaking philosophy to Yamaraj like this. Yamaraj grants her different boons, and then eventually she restores, by Yamaraj's boon, he restores the life to Satyavan. So what's the relevance? What does it have to do with Krishna? What does it have to do with it? He wasn't a devotee. These stories, they're very attractive to the mind, actually. Even when reading Mahabharata, I mean, I'm not coming from a background of Vedic culture. I found it very captivating. It was amazing to read. Sometimes I'm so degraded, I'm reading Bhagavatam, and my mind just goes off like this. But the Mahabharata was very entertaining because it's meant to be like that. Vyasadeva wrote it like that, with the fact that these people who have flippant minds, they can read the Mahabharata and be very absorbed in that. It's very entertaining. It's just like That's a bad, not such good. And that anyway, I'll leave that aside. Something like Krishna, how Srila Prabhupada wrote Krishna book. There's so much philosophy in Krishna book, right? But sometimes you don't understand how the philosophy is being presented. Now, Krishna book is a little different because it's all directly pastimes. But similarly too with Mahabharata, the philosophy is interwoven. So there's these so-called mundane stories, but actually not a syllable of the Mahabharata is mundane. Mahabharata is also Veda, is transcendental. Veda Narayana Sakshat. The Vedas come directly from Narayana. So the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad states, Arisya Mahato Bhutasya Nivashitasya Etadi Yad Rig Vedo Yajor Veda Sama Vedo Tarvangirasya Iti Hasara Puranam Vidya Upanishada Shloka Sutra Yanu Vyakya Nanu Yasyai Vaitani Sarvani Nivashatitani. So translation, the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Samar Veda, and Atharva Veda, the Itihasas, or the histories, means the Mahabharata, the Puranas, the Upanishads, the Shlokas or mantras chanted by the Brahmanas, the Sutras or accumulations of Vedic statements, as well as Vidya, transcendental knowledge, and the explanations of the Sutras and mantras are all emanations from the breathing of the great personality of Godhead. So the Mahabharata is emanation from Narayana himself. It's transcendental, fully transcendental. There's these mundane stories, seemingly, they're not mundane. They're fully transcendental. They have a purpose. It's just like sometimes the Bhagavatam is Amala Purana. Sometimes we hear, or even of demons in the Bhagavatam, actually, sometimes we hear of that, who in and of themselves aren't transcendental. Sometimes we hear genealogy in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It doesn't seem so directly to our mundane eyes transcendental. It doesn't seem so spiritual. But it is, specifically in Bhagavatam, because those dynasties are in a relation with Krishna. So similarly to the Mahabharata, in a sense, everything's in relation with the Pandavas, or ultimately, in a higher sense, the Bhagavad Gita. Everything is aimed at understanding this Bhagavad Gita. And there's different Gitas even. There's the Anu Gita I spoke earlier. There's Bhagavad Gita. There's the reiteration of Bhagavad Gita, Anu Gita. So like this. So this Mahabharata, it presents even those who were disbarred from the conclusions of the Vedas, or studying Vedanta Sutra, which is a little more relevant for those who want to understand conclusions. It presents the essence of the Vedas. So the Stri Shudra Dvijamandus, they can also be delivered like this. So a few points. Sorry, my notes are like all over the place. So yeah, I explained this, that typically only Dvijas study the Vedas. Not exactly a monopoly. It's not a monopoly that only the Dvijas have access to the Vedas, or even the Brahmanas only have access to the Vedas. In one sense it is. Brahmanas, generally, they know one Veda, traditionally so. Now, not so much. It's good to know, but after you've passed a certain age, it's practically impossible to learn unless you dedicate your whole life to it. Better to learn more other things, Bhagavatam, Gita, etc., like that. But generally, generally the Brahmanas they may know a Veda, but it's not that they have a monopoly on it. It's not that Shudras they're completely disbarred from hearing philosophy, spiritual knowledge. It's not that they're disbarred from understanding spiritual knowledge. This is an important point. One, they can hear Mahabharata. Second point, they can even understand the conclusions of the Vedanta Sutra and Vedas, although the mantras aren't to be recited directly to them. Because the duty of a Brahmana is that he studies the Vedas, he assimilates it, and then he teaches others the same thing, even Shudras, to an extent. You can pull up this verse, Bhagavatam 5:5-24. Five five 24. I'll just read the translation. There's this very nice verse. The Vedas. Hang on, what is this chapter? Who's speaking here? I think it's Rishabdev. Rishabdev is speaking here. He says, the Vedas are my eternal transcendental sound incarnation. Therefore, the Vedas are Shabda Brahma. In this world, the Brahmanas thoroughly study all the Vedas. And because they assimilate the Vedic conclusions, they are also to be considered the Vedas personified. The Brahmanas are situated in the supreme transcendental mode of nature, sattva guna. Because of this, they are fixed in mind control, interesting word, shama, sense control, dhamma, and truthfulness, satya. They describe the Vedas in their original sense, and out of mercy, anugraha, they preach the purpose of the Vedas to all conditioned souls. So the Brahmanas, they study the Vedas, and showing mercy, anugraha, they assimilate it, and they teach others the Vedas. They don't keep it just for themselves. They practice penance, tapasya, and tolerance, tidiksha, and they realize the position of the living entity and the Supreme Lord, Anubhava. These are the 8 qualifications of the Brahmanas. Therefore, among all living entities, no one is superior to the Brahmana. Prabhupada has a nice purport, but I won't read it because there's other things I want to cover. So the Brahmana is like this. The Brahmana is merciful. He doesn't run a monopoly. Monopoly means somebody has all the business share in the market and they hoard all the money for themselves. They cut off all competition. Brahmana is not like that. He studies and he distributes these. He even discusses the knowledge amongst other Brahmanas. It's not that he's just some sort of, he puffs himself up by his knowledge. He tries to understand more, both by his study and also discussions and with other Brahmanas, and he teaches this knowledge to others. Of course, it may be in its own way. It's just like sometimes we read Bhagavad Gita. Somebody's coming to the temple, we don't recite the Sanskrit or even the English of Bhagavad Gita to them. We present it to them in a mode of understanding that they can understand. Otherwise, even some translations in Bhagavad Gita is difficult for some people to understand directly. Brahmana is meant to bring the Vedic knowledge and disseminate it for all classes of people. So it requires a high level of understanding of the Vedic philosophy to do this. It's easy to parrot something. It's more difficult to take something, refine it, and put it in simple terms. So Brahmanas are expected to do this. And they also have these qualities I mentioned here. They're fixed in mind control. Shama, Dhamma, Satya, Anugraha, Titiksha, Tapasya, etc. like this. Brahmanas are first-class men. Among all living entities, no one is superior to the Brahmanas. Brahmanas are first-class men. They have all desirable qualities. For the most part, of course, there's conditioning by the mode of sattva also there. But Brahmanas are ideal. They should be ideal. Brahmanas set an ideal by their example. They are the ideal, and they set the ideal. So Brahmanas should be ideal. For those who are initiated as Brahmanas, may not be Brahmanas, may have some contamination by the modes of Rajagun, Tamagun. That's okay because in one sense, at least in the beginning, because initiation means you begin something. It's just like if you initiate the process of learning anything, that doesn't mean you become an expert overnight. So similarly too, we may have medical initiation. We're coming up to a standard, but we should actually come up to that standard, not that we're perpetually in the mode of ignorance like that, not that we're maintaining association with the modes of Tamagun, Rajagun, etc. like this, because other people see this. If a Brahmana, speaking very practically, if a Brahmana, even if he may not be a leader, if a Brahmana is doing something, other people see that. Brahmana is seen as the leader of society. Of course, we can take it some Varnashrama society. Even within devotional Vaishnava society, it's seen like that. Brahmanas are leaders. Those who are the pujaris, who are on the altar, who have a thread around their, generally it's like that, who are doing the deity worship, how they worship the deity, people see that and they imitate that. Somebody may be doing something slightly off in deity worship. People see that and they may be imitating that in their own practices. Brahmana may be doing something wrong because of the fault in his behavior. That fault extends to others because he's setting the example. So therefore, Brahmanas should be ideal in everything they do. And there's so many things that Brahmanas should do. I mean, just like here, they should have control of their mind. They should be truthful. If a Brahmana isn't truthful, who's supposed to be truthful, how can the Shudras expect to be truthful? If the Brahmanas aren't austere, how can others expected to be austere? If those who are supposed to set an example don't set the example, how can others do so? So, for those who are Brahmanas, they have responsibility incumbent upon them. Many things, just like I was speaking earlier, one point is to understand the philosophy. Understand the philosophy, assimilate it, and speak it to others. One point of Brahminical, one duty of a Brahmana is to study the Vedas and explain the Vedas, which also requires assimilation, not just parroting. So it requires a sort of intelligence to do so. It doesn't mean we're pundits. We don't have to know 1,000 different verses. We see, for example, the Brahmana Sri Rangam that Lord Chaitanya came across. He didn't know it. He was illiterate, it's described like that. But he understood the conclusions of the Gita and also the Vedas, ultimately, which is more important than just dry knowledge. So, of course, all things should be there, particularly who have the capacity to do. It's not that we're illiterate, or generally those Brahmanas initiated within Srila Prabhupada's society, they're not illiterate, barring some crazy circumstance. So Brahmanas should know some verses. They should be able to quote them when necessary. Even if they don't know the verses, they should know where they're at within the books. It's not that one is scrambling for something and can't understand a point upon being questioned. Brahmana should know the philosophy and should be able to defend the philosophy, which means he should spend his time engaging in Brahminical activities, studying. Of course, everybody has the morning program, of course, but Brahmana specifically is incumbent upon them to study Vedic literature or cite it like that. You should know how to cook. Brahmana is a very important duty. Most Brahmanas do, at least traditionally. Not all of them. Of course, there's specific, even within Brahmana is a broad category. Just like within Vaishya, there's many different specializations. Same thing within Brahmana. So there's different subcastes, sub-varnas, you could take like jatis, etc. like that. Even within Brahmanas, and they have different duties, but it's good, at least for us, on a practical level here in Atlanta, to know all these things, at least those who are Brahmanas, to know how to cook, to know how to do deity worship, and to do these things tastefully. One point of culture, I was speaking earlier, culture means samskara. Brahmana has undergone a samskara. One point of culture is a sense of refinement in all of one's activities. This comes naturally as a devotee advances in Krishna consciousness, but specifically as well for a Brahmana, he should know how to do these things. Means what I'm speaking of, when a Brahmana is doing deity worship, for example, he doesn't do it very crassly. Being in the mode of goodness, he has a sense of refinement, of taste, a subtlety. Similarly, so you see, you just see many temples in the movement. Vrindavan, for instance, Mayapur as well, who is a very nice Brahmanas there. You see how they dress the deity. There's many details. There's such attention to detail given in dressing to the deity, because it's done in, if not mode of goodness, Krishna consciousness, like this. Cooking as well, anybody can know how to cook. Brahmana should know how to cook nicely, even if not very elaborately. He doesn't have to be an expert, but these subtle points these subtleties in Krishna consciousness, they're expected of all devotees, but specifically of a Brahmana. These things come as one advances in Krishna consciousness. Speaking, even we see, for example, a devotee is poetic. So these things, of course, everybody can't be everything, but this aesthetic sentiment shouldn't be neglected. And also clean. Above all, almost above all, a Brahmana should be clean. If a Brahmana, even if he's learned, but if he's not clean, then it calls his character into pretty high question, actually. Sometimes you see that. Somebody, even they may know many verses, they may understand the philosophy, but when a Brahmana isn't clean, it almost, practically, it's a great disqualification. There's different lists of Brahminical qualities given. Sometimes something here, just like in this verse, I think, Shama is mentioned. Actually, no, here, Paramam Pavitram, he's the most pure. Brahmana is the most pure. Similarly, in Gita, we have the first thing coming is, one place in Gita actually, Shuchi, he's clean. So Brahmana means clean. Elsewhere, another quality that comes first in another verse is Satya, he's truthful. So principally, cleanliness, truthfulness is expected of Brahmanas. And just in general, being in the mode of goodness. Mode of goodness, all these things come automatically, and knowledge comes automatically. Sattvat sanjayati jnanam. By coming to the mode of goodness, knowledge manifests. And how does knowledge manifest? What does that mean? From association, just like from association with the mode of Rajagun comes passion, and then etc. like that comes lust specifically. Association with the mode of goodness comes knowledge. What is that knowledge? Does that mean you get some divine revelation? Maybe, can be so, but principally, Krishna gives a big list. Humility, pridelessness, nonviolence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of objects of sense gratification. Huge list there in the 13th chapter. All these he declares to be knowledge. So Brahmana, who should be coming to the moment of goodness, he would exhibit all these things, even mindedness amidst pleasant and unpleasant activities. So Brahmanas should exhibit these things. If the Brahmanas don't do it, who will? Not everybody may be so. Not everybody will come to the level of the Brahminical platform. Not everybody has the capacity to memorize verses. It's just natural. Not everybody, even they can read so nicely. They may not be able to understand or study, etc. like this. Still, nevertheless, there's facility. Vyasadeva gave these people facility by speaking the Mahabharata. Even Krishna within Gita, he says, Mam hi partha vyapashritya, tipisi papayoniyaha, striyo shudra, what is that? Tata vaishyas, tipiyanti param gatim. Even them, even people of low-born quality, they can attain to, they can also become purified. So one may be Brahmana, one may not be Brahmana. Doesn't necessarily matter. In one sense it matters, in another sense it matters. On the transcendental stage, it doesn't necessarily matter because the ultimate end of even these Varnashrama divisions is Haritoshanam, is to please Lord Krishna. So even one may be a very excellent Brahmana, but if one is a Shudra and he's pleasing Lord Krishna, that's better than being a Brahmana. Just like there's that verse, what is that? Somebody knows this here, maybe. Viprad. There's that as well. Prahlad Maharaj, he says one. I forget how it starts. You don't know this verse? No? Anyway, the English, which is more relevant, he says one may be a Brahmana endowed with all the 12 Brahminical qualifications as mentioned in the book Sujata Sanjani, something like that. But even if one is Shvapaka, even if one is a dog eater, if the Brahmana is adverse to service of Lord Krishna, that dog eater is more elevated if he's a devotee of Krishna. So this is the import of that verse. So one may be a perfect Brahmana, but even more important than being a Brahmana is to be pleasing to Lord Krishna, like this. So different points. Just one other thing I thought to mention. So there's this verse within Bhagavatam itself. Similar, we say, Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Purukasha Abhira Shamba Yavana Kasadiya Yene Chapapa Yad Apashriyashya Shudanti Tasmai Prabhavishnave Namaha. You can pull this up, why not? 2:4:18. Since it's nice to read it with, it's more easily understandable. You can go to the English of it. Kirata Hunda Andra Pulinda, Pulakasha, Abhira, Shamba, Yavana, and other members of the Kasa races, and even others addicted to sinful acts, can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord, due to His being the supreme power. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto Him, Lord Krishna. So, even if one is coming from a very degraded background, if one specifically is stated here, by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord, one can be purified from any circumstances. One may be Shudra, one may be Brahmana, it doesn't exactly matter. As Vamshi Prabhu was quoting, whatever one is, if one understands the science of Krishna, one can be delivered. Oh, it's going up, huh? So, and the easiest way to, this point, taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord. This is more important even than Vedic study. Even more important than anything is even reading Mahabharata, Vedic study, whatever one is doing. Most important thing is taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord. Because otherwise, one can be reading Mahabharata, completely misunderstand it. One can be reading Vedanta Sutra, completely misunderstand it. Shudra or Brahmana, doesn't matter, whatever one is. Main thing is to take shelter of the devotee of Lord Krishna. Because otherwise the import of Shastra doesn't become revealed. Otherwise one is just, he may be reading the vibrations and even he may get some relishment out of that, but And even there may be some purification like that. There is some purification, but the full benefit isn't there. But by taking shelter of the devotees of Krishna, one can be delivered, whatever one background one is coming from. I was quoting this verse earlier. Matirna Krishna Parato Svatu Va. So this is coming, Prahlad Maharaj, he speaks this verse, that those, basically, some rough paraphrase translation, some people, even after their attraction for Krishna is impossible to awaken. But he gives a condition, 2 or 3 verses later. He says, Mahi yasam pararajo bishikam niskinchananam na vrinita yavat. Unless they smear themselves with the dust of the lotus feet of your pure devotee. So by taking shelter of the pure devotee of the Lord, even one may be completely disbarred from Vedic study or from even reading Mahabharata. I mean, myself, I don't have any sort of interest in the Vedic understanding, but because of the mercy, anugraha, of a pure Brahmana Vaishnava, a pure devotee of the Lord, people were able to take up the process of Krishna consciousness. One doesn't have to necessarily be a great scholar. More important than anything else is receiving this mercy of the pure devotee. And by this mercy of the pure devotee, all the imports of Vedic literature are revealed. What are those imports in Vedic literature? That verse is there, famously. Prabhupada, somewhere in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, he explains what are those imports, the imports of all Vedic literature. It's Krishna consciousness. One who takes shelter of a pure devotee, he understands Krishna consciousness. It's a very simple process. So, that's basically all the points of the purport. So I can end class there and open up for... Oh, one other point I thought to mention. So, anyway, this is a little tangential, but I don't exactly... Because I read the Mahabharata. There's a little difference between the Mahabharata and Bhagavatam. I mentioned this in different previous classes. For different reasons. So here, Vidura is going on pilgrimage. I believe, I don't know. I don't think it's described here. Anyway, within the Mahabharata, it's described how Vidura disappeared. I don't think it's described here in the Bhagavatam. But this narration, this whole episode here that's taking place, at least to what I read in the Mahabharata was a summary study. This whole, for example, narration, Vidura's talks in Matra, is mentioned that Vidura was insulted and he left the court of the Kurus. But in Bhagavatam, we find a greater elaboration here. That he was insulted, then this whole, he was given transcendental knowledge by association with Uddhava and then consequently Maitreya. So we find a little different explanation, or not so much different, but elaboration more here in the Bhagavatam. So, like that. Okay, so I can end there and take anything anybody has at this point. Otherwise, we can end.
Actually, this story of Nala and Damayanti, it's mentioned in Mahabharata when Yudhishthir Maharaj Yudhishthir Maharaj means Draupadi is pointing to Yudhishthir Maharaj that you have brought this misfortune to us. And there he has this question, like how misfortune we are. And then somebody
who's been more misfortunate, something like that.
Like that. So that's the reason, because at the end of the story, Nala and Damayanti stories, they even lose the clothing on their body. Something. Nala or I read it a long time back. So that's the reason it is mentioned. I don't remember about Savitri in this Satyavana.
That comes elsewhere. That comes a little later in the Mahabharata,
Yeah, but means I don't remember the context.
Oh, the context. The context of that, I also forget the context of that.
That's the same I'm expressing.
Yeah. I think the context of that, of the Savitri, that was spoken in relation to Draupadi. I think something having to do with the chastity of a woman. That story, I forget. I'm hazy, but yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, that was specifically spoken because of that. Maharaj Yudhishthira lost his kingdom, gambling in a game of dice, and like he was saying, then some sage, I forget exactly, it was like, let me tell you the story of somebody who's even more miserable than you, who suffered even more than you.
Yeah.
So yeah. Something more?
I was just mentioning the point that like Brahminic for a Brahmana, it seems like the truthfulness aspect is like one of the most important, like, because it's like we have that, at least he's honest, sort of that phrase is there. So for a Brahmana to lie and to cheat above all of the other things, that seems to be like the most like degrading thing.
Well, the thing is, if you just like, this is my own philosophical speculation, but it's just like this, the nectar instruction. We start with the first verse. So similarly, the Brahminical qualifications, they're listed in a certain order. And Srila Prabhupada will often make the point that, again, there's different qualities that come first. But truthfulness specifically is, in Gita, that famous verse, it comes first. There's a second one that comes there. There's that one, there's another one, I forget exactly. Or maybe that's in the Bhagavatam, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think you were maybe mentioning the Bhagavatam.
But if these first qualities, you can take it either way, but if the first qualities aren't cultivated, it's difficult to cultivate the following qualities.
Anuveda karam vakyam satyam priya hitam chayat. I think the truthfulness comes out. I don't know.
What is that? Maybe I'm thinking of a
That's
Bhagavatam
something
verse.
else. Yeah, maybe.
There's one in the 7th canto. I think there's 2 in the Gita. But anyway, I kind of cut you off there. Can you finish that?
No,
Sorry.
I was just saying that it seems, that's basically it. It just seems like when a Brahmana may not be particularly learned in the Veda, like learned in Shastra, and say, okay, then like we talked about, there's different levels of Brahmanas. Some are not super qualified in studying of the Vedas. And then, or they may not be super clean. It's like, okay, whatever. But like, if the Brahman is not truthful, then it's like, even a normal person is not truthful. It's like this guy, you don't want to, even a Shudra is not truthful. A person who's not on the level of Krishna consciousness, you don't want to associate with them. But what to speak of a Brahman, it seems to be like one of the most degrading aspects, if a Brahman is not truthful. I've just seen that. It's like, it really puts everybody off. And like you've seen that in the movement or in different places, it's just like, all right, it's like whether it may be truthful with philosophy or truthful with one's activities or one's doings, seems to be one of the, it's also the Kali Yuga that's meant to be the last standing leg is truthfulness, and then the Brahmana is degraded in that, then that's like really degraded, it's like, wow, okay, you're not truthful, then you've lost all qualities of a Brahmana. Seems like that, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, it's definitely... It undermines faith in the Brahminical order, actually, not just one Brahmana, but Brahmanas are leaders. If the Brahmana isn't truthful, then it just spells havoc. Another point, if a Brahmana isn't truthful, I would wager to say, unless, if it's character, not just a one-off thing, but if it's an inherent character fault, he's not so much a Brahmana, he's a Dvija Bandhu, practically. Particularly, Iskon Devotee, we're famous for saying this verse that you're a Brahmana by quality, but it's not that when one begets Brahminical initiation, it's like he's entered into a caste and he can never not become a Brahmana anymore. If you get Brahminical initiation, second initiation, what we call, and you're not clean and you're not truthful, how can you be a Brahmana? You may be wearing the thread, but actually you're not a Brahmana. So, yeah, it is very important, that truthfulness. Otherwise, it just degrades. It's characteristic of the mode of Sattva Guna as well, to be truthful. Of course, there's conditions. It's not that one is blindly truthful, just like there's that story with, who is that? The thief, yeah. That also comes in the Mahabharata, actually, this story. I think it was narrated in Maharaj Yudhishthira by somebody, I forget, maybe Krishna, I'm not sure. Is it in there somewhere in the Mahabharata? But yeah, this thief, we're familiar with the story, etc. like this. So there's times, there's even conditions to everything, but generally the principle is truthful. And you have to look at what's being done too, If a Brahmana is deceitful for, unvalid reasons, reasons for sense gratification, you could take it like that, then it's like, it's not so good, to say the least. So, yeah, it's very important. It's important for Brahmanas to be ideal. Otherwise, in everything, in character and behavior, Brahmanas should, like I was saying earlier, they should be able to, they're examples for all others. If a Brahmana is lying, then it's like that's the example that's been set for everybody else, basically. Even if he's not a leader, because he's been given Brahminical initiation like that. So, you have something? Yeah.
Prabhu, I guess the standard here is that one shouldn't read the Mahabharata until they've read all of Prabhupada's books. Leelamrita. What's like the explanation for that?
Oh,
Like
you're
this-
reading Mahabharata from the beginning, Bhagavad Gita. That's like the essence of the Mahabharata.
Yeah,
I would say that.
But directly, like you're now like allowed to read all of Prabhupada's books, like specifically. And I mean, you're not read the Mahabharata specifically until you read all of Prabhupada's books. Is there like a direct reason for
A
that?
direct reason? Well, I mean, just so you have a thorough understanding, that's one thing. Just like I was saying, there's some pretty big differences actually between the Mahabharata and the Bhagavatam, and there's different Mahabharatas as well. Generally, I mean, we have our own translations now. There's a Karma Kandiya version of the Mahabharata, which has something about Parikshit Maharaj dying, hiding himself away in like a fortress or something like this. So there's even different versions of the Mahabharata, but that's not so much relevant to your question. As to why that is, just to get an understanding of the philosophy. I mean, it's just like we read the Gita first. Why? To understand the essence. I mean, these 4 books, Nectar and Instruction, Gita, Bhagavatam, and also Chaitanya Charitamrita, they're the essence, basically. We concentrate on the essence. There's other books as well, but at least read the essence first before we go on to like something that's not essential. Mahabharata is also, in a sense, essential. We should be familiar with it. It's not everybody can read it, but more important is to read Prabhupada's books first and understand that. Otherwise, you can misunderstand some things. And mainly, too, it's stories for the most part, honestly. If you read it, it's like a lot of... I mean, it's in relation to devotees, but on a day-to-day basis, it's more important to like understand, applying the philosophy. Of course, we're hearing Bhagavatam as well, but at least for that, principally, at least in the beginning, just to understand like that. So...
Thank you.
Yes.
I have a question about Satyam, because Brahmana should be like a truthful.
Yeah.
But how we can distribute the books and be truthful?
Exceptions.
because you can see if like, for example, if you go like for airport and you ask them this, I like your hair, bro, and then what is this? No, he have like no, even is this? Yes, I know some beard or something. This is not true, but we can tell that it's just like not like our philosophy. No, it's a philosophical point. No, what is this? But if you go to Sai Baba temple, you know, and there's you distributed books in Sai Baba temple, and this whole people is going for this is bogus rascal number 1, and they worship him, and you keep it silent now. No. Oh yes, Prabhuji, this is Haribol. Yes, it's mean you're like became also you support this because you're not speaking the truth, because somebody is like cheating other people. And you keep it silent in that moment. It's mean you also became like one of that person who is from this party, you know. And how we can be a brahmana if you want to distribute the books?
That's a good point. Well, one thing, I'll say this now because it's in my mind, regarding that point, keeping silent. Well, that is true in one sense, but there's also... it's just like if somebody says something wrong, and within assembly brahmanas, the brahmanas don't object to it, then it's also incumbent upon the brahmanas like that. They should be able to like fix things like that. But there's even considerations within that. Just like a good example, say, so many different things. A good example, say, okay, the Hare Krishna movement during the USSR. So, I mean, our philosophy is directly against what they stand for, both the materialistic communism, the atheism they stand for. Now, the devotees then weren't necessarily going out in the streets and protesting against the government or like actively exposing governmental practices. Even now, there's different countries like that as well. Muslim countries is another good example. Devotees don't necessarily go out and expose the wrong ideas of tamogun religions, for instance, even though it may be so. Same thing within the USSR. Why? It's wrong, but it's done with an intent. Specifically, take the USSR example, to remain low-key and distribute books, and then the books can do the work, where you don't have to necessarily, in other words, you can do so, it's not necessarily invalid to do so, but more like long-term option. If you were to do so, say, in USSR, you would have been in prison. But if you remain, to keep low-key and concealed, I guess, so to say. So similarly to preaching amongst Muslims, sometimes you see people, even a few devotees, not many people, but they may enter a group like that poses one. They give books. Sometimes it works. It can work. Sometimes that preaching is necessary. You kind of have to feel out the situation. You know what I mean? So just in essence, to sum that up, one thing is if you give somebody a book, it's not necessarily that you're remaining silent because you're speaking. Actually, there's kirtan there because you're giving them a book. It just may not be so feasible to like then and there kind of like smash the philosophy. If you're in like the war ground, if you're in like the kingdom of like another, you know what I mean? There's like a difference between going there and declaring like as a one-man army versus going on as like a what do you call it? Spy, something like that, you know? So that's one sort of explanation I will give to that. I had something else, but I forgot it. I'm sorry. Is that okay? Is that like satisfying? And one thing I would say in general for Brahmanas and just all devotees, it's good to be truthful in book distribution, if you can be, as far as possible. I mean, it's not that a Brahmana should go out there and just completely lie to people and just say this is a book on like, this is like a comic book. Because it's not. Now, there is scope, and Prabhupada did give a scope. Generally, I find that a more conservative approach towards like everything is generally the safest in Krishna consciousness. And so more directly presenting what we have is generally better, unless the circumstances disbar us from doing so. And even we may not tell people this is like, itihasa, etc., like this is Bhagavad Gita. We may just present in very simple terms, but it's more sattvic, more Brahminical to do so like that. Of course, we're not just concerned with being so Brahmanas. Main thing is distributing Krishna consciousness. So even in regards to that, there's even leeway with things like that. So that's how I would explain that. You have more?
That tendency, sometimes we can see the tendency that when you make some compromise and you like try to hide the truth, like for example, if you do like for distribution for Westerners, you can take this is about yoga, this is about meditation, and day after day, when you're doing this, you also can they lose the goal of this.
Yeah.
That's also tendency is there, because sometimes you can think we can distribute more books, more scores, like is very nice. More people they get the books, but you can lose your like consciousness, your Krishna consciousness, and after some time you can stop also your book distribution because no taste, no understanding, no proper focusing for this, and it's good like a desire to distribute more books, and but after some time you also can try to hide the purpose of this book distribution, try to hide the Krishna, and try to hide the absolute truth. It's also very like dangerous, and this because of that I have this question, how to make this proper balance.
Yeah, I've noticed that with a few not here, but I've known devotees like that. They've been doing book distribution with that. I mean, some people do that technique. I've known people who have done that technique, and they just kind of get fried out with book distribution. They just don't find it enlivening, basically. Because, I mean, if you try to hide Krishna, it's like, it feels a little hollow, and anything in Krishna consciousness. The ultimate point is to bring people towards Krishna. So as far as possible, presenting Krishna, that's the most enlivening for both ourselves and also for others.
Yes, like as example, Brigupati Prabhu, like he also like his lines is very simple. Like
it's very simple, yeah.
We have one barber shop or something like this. He's showing his like shaving head but philosophy and all also like very nice, and he has follow. It's very good example also.
Mamshi Prabhu, you wanted? I thought I saw a hand. Yeah. Then we can go. There's another two. Then we can go Mataji's.
With reference to this, actually, we can take the case of Yudhishthira Maharaj speaking a lie. Because Krishna, because for point, dharma we are doing this. We should know that, of course. Like, of course, on that context, we should not be speaking everything and anything, like some people do. So that should be the case, actually. Yeah. Another point, he said that only truthfulness may be the main aspect of a Brahmana. But then, it's like if you see that a Brahmana is defined or any Kshatriya is defined according to his guna and karma. So that guna is not one single guna. It has like multiples of gunas, like 26 qualities we have for the Brahmana. So it's like we discussed, I had this discussion with David, he had some question. So that one quality, maybe it can be subside others and come up, but other qualities also should be there. Like Kshatriya may have that valor, means he may have that spirit in the body, or to show his spirit, but then on the battlefield, if he's not showing his valor, or if he's not being enough brave, then he's not a Kshatriya. So only one quality can't define a Brahmana or a Kshatriya or a Vaishya. So all qualities combined makes him actually, like if he's a Brahmana, he's been truthful and he's doing illicit relationships and he's saying, I have done this, then okay, he's been truthful as a Brahmana, but then he has broken another principle for that. So on his point, it was like Yudhishthira Maharaj spoke dharma, lies, just because Krishna told him. So for dharma, if you are because if you tell him directly that we tell people this is Bhagavad Gita, take this book on devotion and yoga, and then people just walk away. Like here it happens, in India you can tell. So for that reason, or maybe we see at Patel Brothers, we give Guru Prasad, and then slowly we tell him the book. Of course, sometimes I also fell obscure, like telling him like that, you are giving a donation for the temple. So, but then sometimes just for giving him some higher principle, or like connecting him to Krishna or Dharma, we have to do. Then what's wrong in that? I don't think so. What do you feel?
Mataji's, any questions? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.